Hey guys, welcome to this week's review of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Season 2, episode, I don't know, but I think it's episode 12. We're going to go with 12. Review! That was a great intro. Okay, let's just get right into it. I like the fact that I don't know if they broke the fourth wall necessarily, but I love that Lisa addressed the blogs, right? Because they're all sitting around without Mary, talking about Mary, and the fact that Mary, allegedly, is a cult leader, right? And Meredith is acting like because Lisa is talking about her friend who used to be in Mary's church, right? And Lisa's telling the group, right? And Meredith is acting like she never heard about this before, that Lisa is just not necessarily making something up, but isn't really giving substantial evidence. And Lisa was straight up like, you don't watch YouTube? You haven't read the blogs? Like, come on. And that's the thing I've been feeling with these ladies when it comes to Mary, especially Meredith. Her acting like she's never heard these stuff before is like, come on, right? Even Whitney knew a little bit, right? And even I wouldn't say Whitney was acting like she never heard this stuff before, but still, they're all acting kind of brand new. Just like you knew Jen was a bit shady, you guys know that Mary is also a bit shady. So can we stop pretending here? But I get it. It's not like these ladies are genuine friends. Now, there may be genuine friendships within the cast, but the cast as a whole, I don't know. They do still kind of feel very fragmented to me, right? And even with Mary, I don't really feel like Mary is truly friends with anyone. The closest person she is to is Meredith, but even that, I'm not really buying that they're like these. I don't know. I'm not buying that they're that close. I'm not. But, they can't break the fourth wall, right? These are not friendships. These are cast members. These are their coworkers. So they do have to film with each other. And if as a collective they decide that, listen, we're not going to mess with Mary because what she has going on, then they are effectively cutting her out of the group. They're cutting her out of the show, right? And let's be real, okay? Mary is definitely... Is Mary the star? I'm going to say Mary is the star of the show, or I will say at least that Mary is an asset to the show, right? I think the producers and Bravo, they value what she brings to it. So they're not going to just cut her out like that. They're not going to let the other ladies ice her out. I feel like they are more likely to bring in new ladies through Mary that will film with her versus kicking Mary out so the other ladies will feel comfortable. So it is kind of an awkward position because I don't really think the other ladies have too much of a choice. So it's like they're kind of forced to film with Mary, even though Mary's sketchy. And I get it because that's how I feel about Mary myself, like Ramona, like Kelly Dodd is like, she's one of those people that they're so entertaining and fun to watch that you excuse their bad behavior, right? Even though we have all this tea on Mary, there's a large part of me that wants to believe it's not true and it's a load of crap because I love Mary on this show, right? And if all the stuff they're saying is true about Mary, I don't think she should be on the show. I don't. I really don't. But it's like, oh my gosh. It's going to suck. It is. But listen, if it's true, which it's leaning in that direction, right? If Mary's sketchy, then what's the saying? Everything done in the dark, it will come to light, right? So she will be exposed. It is what it is, and she has to take responsibility for that. And I don't know. Certain things may come out. I think Bravo would probably try to protect her as much as they can. And it may have worked, say, 10 years ago when the Housewives first started. But we're in 2021, moving into 2022, and we have social media now. So the information is going to get out there, right? So it's going to come to a point where if the information is looking pretty sleazy, Bravo can't protect her. They have to protect their brand. So she may be gone, which will be sad, but what can you do, right? So the ladies, they have their back and forth. And I guess Meredith's whole excuse for sticking up for Mary is that, well, you guys accepted Jen, and Jen is just as sketchy. And, you guys make excuses for her. And to be honest, Jen has been way worse to everybody else than Mary has been. Mary has moments here and there, but Mary has been, fairly pleasant with everybody, right? So I guess Meredith finds that that's unfair, but I don't know. You can't compare what one person is doing over here to what another person is doing over here. You can't say, well, they got away with it, so she should be able to get away with it. No, they both did sketchy stuff, right? Allegedly. And if it turns out to be true, then they should face the consequences of that. But at the end of the day, if Meredith wants to still remain friends with Mary, then that's her prerogative, right? But, Lisa kind of gets upset with Meredith because Meredith kind of wants to be in denial about the whole situation, right? And Lisa storms off. What I do like about Lisa, but low-key, the producers probably told her to go knock on Mary's door and have a conversation with her, like, all the ladies are talking about you. But hey, Lisa did it. Lisa went to Mary and confronted her with the information, right? So I appreciate that. And of course, Mary is not going to come out and say, yep, I am a cult leader. Yep, I think I'm God. She's not going to say that out loud, or not out loud, but she's not going to say that in front of the cameras, right? You're not going to catch her that way. So we're going to see how everything unfolds with that. But speaking about Mary, this is why I love Mary, right? She goes and she knocks on Jenny's door, right? And I guess her and Jenny made up, which is great because I don't really think their beef was that serious. I guess Jenny did her makeup, right? And they had a moment with each other, which was, which is wonderful. So Mary comes into a room with a Louis Vuitton booty, right? Which is absolutely gorgeous. And like, here's a gift for you doing my makeup, right? And like, Jenny's like so excited and everything. And Mary in her confessionals is like, well, I wasn't really trying to give her a gift. I just, I packed it, and I guess I didn't really need it. I just wanted to make my luggage a little lighter, so I just handed it off to her. She obviously, I can't make it sound as funny as Mary did in her confessionals, but it was terrible, but it was hilarious, and that's why I like Mary. I do, right? But it seems like Mary has been going around giving everybody gifts, all the ladies gifts. And I don't know, is she bribing them? Is she paying for their loyalty? Is she trying to get them to like her? I don't know what it is, but if Mary wants to make her luggage a little lighter, I'm for it. Give me a Louis Vuitton booty, please. If that's what you want to do to lighten the load, I don't care what your intentions are. I will take it. Now, am I going to be loyal to you? Am I going to turn a blind eye to your religious cult? Probably not. I don't think that's going to work, right? So fast forward to the next day, and Whitney is, not too happy with Heather, right? Because she overheard Heather, Lisa, and Mary kind of laughing and giggling and having a good time, right? And Whitney's confused about that because they were literally the night before all talking crap about Mary, saying that she's, they didn't say she was a scammer, but they were saying that she was sketchy, right? And then like an hours later, they're laughing and giggling. Like I said before, I mean, yes, they have to acknowledge Mary, but at the same time, they're coworkers, right? I mean, they have to acknowledge what Mary is potentially doing. But listen, they kind of have to film together. They kind of have to have some sort of relationship. Are they going to walk around being mad at her? Are they going to ice her out? I don't think that's going to happen, right? Especially with Mary giving gifts to everybody. I think that can definitely break the ice, right? And Heather, I don't know. I don't really vibe with Heather. I do think that Heather is kind of a little... Is she two-faced? Just a bit. Just a tad. But I don't know. Heather is kind of explaining what happened. And when Heather explains what happened, it makes sense, right? It's not like Heather sought Mary out. Mary and Lisa came into her room. So maybe Lisa is being two-faced. But to be fair with Lisa, she did have the conversation with Mary to her face. She said everything that she said in front of the ladies, she said to Mary, right? So if they were able to work it out or come to some sort of conclusion, then that is fine, right? But when Heather is telling the story, she kind of makes it sound like Lisa was throwing Whitney under the bus, right? That Whitney was the only one talking about Mary and her church. When we know that's not the case from the scene that we saw. Like Lisa didn't really make it sound like that's what she believes, but Lisa spoke more so on Cameron, the friend, and the blogs and everything, right? Lisa may have brought up Whitney one time, right? When she said that in the church that they call Mary God or whatever like that. But I don't really feel like, from what we've seen in the scene, now there could have been behind the scene things where Lisa was saying, well, it was mainly Whitney saying X, Y, and Z. We do not know that, but from the scene I saw, it didn't seem like Lisa was throwing Whitney under the bus at all. But of course, Heather and Whitney have this narrative where Lisa's the devil, Lisa's the worst of the worst. So I feel like maybe because Whitney was mad at Heather kind of served Lisa's plate on a silver platter to kind of get the heat off of her, right? And of course, because Whitney just has this vendetta against Lisa, I'm not going to say it's invalid, right? But I do feel like she kind of zooms in on everything that Lisa does to kind of make her the bad guy in every situation. So this just added to it, right? And I don't know, I guess Mary is like icing Whitney out or doesn't want to have anything to do with her for whatever reason. But at the end of the day, I mean, I can't say that Whitney shouldn't care, but at the end of the day, if you're dealing with someone that is, in your eye, not a great person, then you shouldn't really care if they like you or not. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, she wants to give everybody a gift but me, fine. She wants to talk to everybody but me, fine, whatever. I don't need to be around someone like that anyway, so that's not too much of a bother. So I've been watching Teal Swan. She's like a spiritual guru. She has a bunch of videos on YouTube. Check them out if you're interested. The relationship between Heather and Nancy, it reminds me of a video that Teal Swan did about basically being a doll to your parents, right? You're not seen as your own human being. right? You're seen as property. You're seen as sort of this blank canvas, and your parents are the one that kind of like shape who you're going to be. And yes, that is true, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work both ways. I definitely feel like just as a parent can shape a child, I think a child can shape a parent, because a child is their own being. They're going to have their own interests. They're going to have their own hobbies. They're going to have their own way of expressing themselves. And it may not always be aligned with what a parent wants. It may not always be a convenience for the parents. Just like, listen, if a baby's hungry, a baby's not going to be hungry at the best time for a parent, right? If the baby wants to go number 2 or number 1 in their diaper and they're crying because they want to be changed, that may be at 3 a.m. where you want to sleep, right? But that's what the baby wants, and the baby isn't able to do it itself, so it does need the parent, right? But when you're raised by someone who's very strict and it's pretty much their way or the highway, and you're not, any expression that contradicts them, you're deemed as problematic, or you become the scapegoat, it's very heartbreaking, right? And I feel like Heather and her sister Nancy represents the scapegoat, and Heather represents the golden child, right? And it was very interesting when Nancy said that I was jealous of you, but you were probably jealous of me, right? Because it's a heartbreaking situation for both ends of the spectrum, because on the golden child, on the surface, they seem like they have everything going for them, right? They belong to the family, the parents love them, while the scapegoat is cast aside. They're the villain of the story. Everything is their fault, blah, blah, blah. But to be the golden child, you really have to sacrifice yourself and who you are in order to please your parents. And the scapegoat, the positive side of that is that, yeah, you get to figure out who you are as a person, right? You get to live your own life. But unfortunately, that means sacrificing your family. It's a sucky situation both ways, right? But I am happy that Heather has now come to a point where she is able to have her own life. Unfortunately, it did take her father passing for her to come to this point, but better late than never, right? She now sees the error of her ways, right? And she seems really, really open to having a relationship with her sister. And what's great about her sister, she could have been bitter, right? She could have been like, well, F you, you guys didn't talk to me. And we find out that she had MS. Like, wow, imagine like going through that without your family. Like, that must have been devastating, right? So she could have been really angry at them. She could have been like, well, I want nothing to do with you. And a lot of people, including myself, would say, well, that's valid for her to feel like that. But the fact that she's able to be like, okay, yeah, you guys hurt me, but I still want to build a relationship with you guys. That is important to me. Because I think that she realizes that, I don't want to say they were brainwashed, but they kind of were. They didn't have a choice. If you didn't want to be excluded, if you wanted to be loved, which is very important, what child doesn't want to be loved by their parents, right? So she gets it. She gets why Heather did what she did, and she's able to have compassion and empathy for her. So it's really, really great that they're able to move forward. Yeah, don't you would wish that it would have been sooner, but like I said, better late than never. So this was a really great scene. And I know I give Heather a hard time, but I really enjoyed this scene. So they're leaving already. I feel like they just got on this trip, right? Like, how long did they stay? What, a day? And they're leaving? No sort of activities? Did I miss something? Okay, fine. If they're gonna leave, they're gonna leave. It is what it is. But before they do, all the ladies, they get together, right? And they talk about Mary to Mary this time. And it was a complete mess, an entertaining mess, but a mess nonetheless. Where to even begin? Now, I think that, like I said before, Heather and Whitney are like over committed to Lisa. Lisa is this supervillain kind of narrative. And don't get me wrong, Lisa has her faults, right? And Lisa very much may be two-faced and playing the game and setting things up. I'm not going to cape for Lisa, right? I wouldn't be surprised if that came out. But I think by focusing so much on that, it's making Heather and Whitney look a little cray-cray to me, right? I'm getting sort of tired of it. If you're going to call Lisa out at this point, I'm going to need receipts, right? I'm going to need hardcore receipts, because from what I've seen, at least Lisa is willing to have the conversation with Mary, right? Lisa said everything that okay, let me correct that. Do I believe that Lisa said everything to Mary's face that she said behind her back? No, right? Like, and I'm not going to fault somebody for that, right? Because, like, you may not say everything you said behind the person's back to their face, but Lisa said a lot to Mary's face, right? And I have yet to see Whitney really have that conversation with her. And I've yet to see Heather fully have that conversation with her. So when they're pointing the finger at Lisa, they're looking a little bit hypocritical to me, right? Because when Heather had a chance to say everything that she had to say, she had a breakdown and stormed off. Now, this is why Mary is truly entertaining, but Mary is gonna get canceled. She is. Like, the fact that she's saying, oh, they're comparing me to Jen, but Jen's a thug, she's like those Mexican, people. Like, oh my gosh, that was so cringy. Maybe she was trying, I guess Mary was trying to say the cartel, right? But then she just said the Mexican, people, and it's like, oh my gosh, Mary, you're gonna get yourself canceled. I don't want to see you go. I really don't. But if they fire you, she's gonna deserve it. And I won't even be able to fight for Mary. I would be like, okay, she's off the show. She's fired. Okay, I understand. I get it. I do. I don't want to see her go, but oh my gosh. And that's the thing. That's what I love about her, but I feel like that's what's going to be her downfall, because she just says whatever, right? But moving on, right? As I was saying, it just feels like they want to make everything Lisa's fault. And Lisa, yes, is it kind of suspect that she has Cameron come to her event? Now, Lisa says he's the head of a foster group or whatever in Utah or whatever, right? So it makes sense for him to be there, plus they're friends. So it doesn't seem too far-fetched. However, I'm not going to be like, it does seem a bit contrived. I'm not going to lie, right? I wouldn't be surprised if it was also a setup. So that is definitely a conversation that, Lisa needs to have with the group, and Lisa needs to answer to when it comes to the reunion. But I think it's wildly unfair to pin everything on her and make everything her fault. Because, like I said, at least she did have that conversation with Mary. Whitney, Heather, I haven't seen you have that conversation, right? Meredith, she did talk behind her back, but she owned up to it, right? And she brought everybody together and she opened up the topic, right? And she said what she had to say to Mary. So everybody is willing to have that conversation, even Jenny, right? Except Heather and Whitney. It feels more like they want to point the finger. That's the impression that I'm getting, right? And Mary, I don't know. Mary has her ways, but I don't see why they would be scared of Mary, right? You know, Heather storms off and she's like, well, everybody's being two-faced and they're not being truthful because everyone's afraid of Mary. Correction, I don't think everybody's afraid of Mary. I think Heather is afraid of Mary, to be honest with you. And I think that if anybody in the group were to be two-faced, and I use that loosely, right? It's not really that much of a dig to me, but I'm just saying, right? Because since the group wants to use the word two-faced or the phrase, right? If anybody in the group were to be two-faced, it would be Heather, right? And I think when it's time for Heather to kind of stand up for herself, as soon as Mary kind of gets into her a little bit, she runs off, right? And maybe part of the reason that her and Whitney do feel that way is because they're not privy to the conversation that Lisa had to Mary, right? And Lisa was trying to say, well, I came to Mary that night and I told her what we were talking about or what I was talking about. So she knows, right? And Mary confirms that. But Heather runs off and is not willing to have that conversation. So she's not getting the full picture. So I can also understand from the knowledge that Heather has, it definitely can look two-faced, right? So I get that, but I think Heather just really was triggered and overreacted. And you know, Mary's terrible. Oh my God. When Mary was kind of trying to imply that Heather was always drunk, you know, and listen, I'm not going to judge Heather because she was Mormon for how many decades where they weren't allowed to drink. So now that she's not Mormon, she wants to have a drink. Let her have a drink. She's experimenting. She's having fun. Of course, you know, I don't want her to go too far with it, but you could tell that was definitely a trigger for Heather. I'm pretty sure she probably still feels a little bit of guilt with drinking, right? Because you don't change overnight, right? If you've been one way for the majority of your life and you're recently making a change, I can understand that it's a sensitive topic. So I feel like that was more of the reaction, because once Mary said that, Heather was done with the conversation, which I definitely can understand, right? So it's a big mess. There was a lot of back and forth. You know, Whitney's over it as well, right? Because Mary has decided for some reason that she's done with Whitney, right? Because Whitney didn't pick up her calls, essentially. I do feel like Mary is being a little bit hard on Whitney. Like, if you are able to move past things with Lisa and have some sort of resolve, then I don't see why you can't move past things with Whitney. So Whitney's over it as well. You know what I mean? And Meredith had arranged a private jet, but Whitney and Heather at this point, they rather fly commercial. So it is what it is. But another hilarious point was when Mary went to Heather after Heather stormed off and everything. And Mary was like, if you were my friend, then it wouldn't have to be this way. Basically saying, if you had concerns and you came to me directly, then we could have addressed everything. You know what I mean? And Heather says, well, I'm sorry for hurting you, Mary. And Mary said what we were all thinking. Well, I don't think that Heather is a liar. That's a bit extreme. But that apology did not come off as sincere at all. At all. Right? And I think that's sort of the problem that I have with Heather, is that she wants to be the good guy. She does. And I can relate to that. I can. So I don't judge Heather too harshly. But, sometimes when you, want to be the good guy, your words don't really hold too much integrity, because you're just going to say whatever in the moment to placate whoever's in front of you. You know what I mean? And I do think that Heather is intimidated by Mary for some reason or another, right? And she does want to keep the peace. So she said, I'm sorry for hurting your feelings. But I don't think that was authentic, because in that moment, Heather's feelings was hurt, right? And in that moment, Heather probably should have said, well, when you said that I'm always drinking and whatever, and oh my gosh, well, Mary didn't say this to Heather's face, but when she called her the chubby one or whatever she said, oh my gosh, Mary, right? Mary was reading Heather, right? And Meredith was kind of laughing and stuff. I can't with Mary. I really can't. I can't. I'm done with Mary. I'm done with her, right? But in that moment, if Heather had said, well, you hurt me when you made this comment, then that would have been more of a genuine interaction, and maybe they could have had somewhat of a resolve. But her sort of being inauthentic, it kind of just shut everything down. And it was also funny when Mary was like, you're weird. I can't with Mary. Overall, listen, Mary is not really defendable at this point. She's just likable and entertaining. That is the problem, right? But like I said, Mary isn't going to just say, I'm a cult leader, or, she's not going to say that. And when she explained the sort of God thing, I don't believe I am God, but I have God in me, that's sort of a nice sort of twist and save, right? Because we can all say, yeah, there's God in all of us, right? So is that what she was trying to say to her congregation? I highly doubt it. Right, but it is a good explanation. And when, Mary broke down and started crying, and I don't really know at the end of the day. We're going to have to see more of how this plays out. We're going to, the receipts are already out there in the blogs. I guess I'm going to do a little bit more research myself to formulate a strong opinion on that situation, but it is what it is at this point. This was a really good episode. At the beginning of the season, that's crazy. We're 12 episodes in. Wow. So at the beginning of the season, I don't know. I wasn't really feeling it, but it has definitely picked up. And oh my gosh, that mid-season trailer, wow. It seems like it's really gonna pick up. So I'm absolutely here for it. I am now excited about Salt Lake City. And I want to give a special shout out to Meredith, right? She is definitely, from that mid-season trailer, she is no longer disengaging. She is engaging, right? And I'm enjoying Meredith. I am. I'm enjoying everybody, I may not like... The only person that I kind of don't slightly dislike is Heather. But I still like Heather for the show. I like all of these ladies for the show. Even Jenny, right? So maybe not Jen. Actually, these couple of episodes without Jen has actually been refreshing. You know, it's kind of crazy that Jen was arrested, but in this episode, I mean, yeah, they did mention her, but not really, right? So we can do without Jen. Other than that, I enjoy everybody. I enjoyed this episode. I enjoy you guys, the audience, listening to me now. And I'm going to stop rambling at this point.